Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and on today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Seamus Brady from Play on GA, as usual at this stage in the week, just to discuss the weekend's action with football and hurling. It's a bit of a quieter weekend than last weekend, especially. Last weekend was absolutely mad. A load of action last weekend. This weekend is a lot more quieter without the Tailteann Cup there. There's 4 football games, also 5 hurling games, and the Joe McDonagh Cup as well. But the hurling, when you look at the last day fixtures, there is some mouth-watering clashes, but we'll discuss them all in this episode. I suppose, first of all, Seamus, how you been over the last few days? Exciting championship results in the last few days, especially last weekend when you look at Westmeath beating Wexford, Mayo beating Kerry, and a load of other brilliant results happening.
Yeah, just crazy results. And first of all, thanks for having me back on again, Matthew. Delighted to be back on the channel here with yourself. Just like crazy results. Like, I wonder what the odds you would have got on Westmeath to come back and beat Wexford would have been. Like, genuinely, that's the most embarrassing result I've ever seen. Genuinely, I don't remember a more embarrassing result. And for Wexford now, like, God, they have a test ahead of them going away to, hosting Kilkenny, and they have to get the win. Like, that's real backs to the wall. You thought last year was tough. Like, at least last year they were showing you something by drawing with Galway and the league form that they had up to that point. This year they've shown me nothing. So it's like, obviously we'll get into the game more so, but I'm really worried for them because I think Antrim probably are favourites, in my opinion, going into that game in Cusack Park in Mullingar. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Of course, then the All-Ireland group stages as well. Week 2, like, it's not round 2. It's still, the teams getting to play each other now, but it's the other 2 from each group. So, they've seen what the first 2 teams have done. Now it's time for the second 2 teams in each group to step up. And yeah, you're right. Having seen the result that Mayo put up against Kerry, having seen, Sligo drawn with Kildare, like some shocking results, really. It's time for the other 2 sides in each group to step up now and show what they're made of.
Exactly so, and we will discuss all the permutations and things in the hurling championship in the next while. The football will be coming up first, but first of all, we will touch on a bit of a segment that I wanted to introduce on the podcast. It's just a week in the GA, and there's been a load of things happening. On Sunday, we had Donal Cusack and Joanne Cantwell having a mini bust up really on the Sunday game with Donal saying he didn't say those comments about the Tailteann Cup being the competition for also runs, and then a lot of social media talk about that, and then there was a talk about scheduling. There was a new podcast come out actually with Pat Spillane, Tomas Mulcahy and Michael Lester. Actually, they discussed the scheduling around the GA at the moment, and that's a big thing that they need to fix. Even Holly O'Sullivan of the Southern Star podcast this week went on about the provincial championship, saying that yes, Ulster was a brilliant provincial final and there is the possibility of a fairy tale, but when you look at 3 out of the 4 provincial finals in football, they were an absolute waste of time. So a lot of stories happening this week. I just wanted to ask you first about the scheduling really, Seamus, in the GA at the moment. Like, a lot of games last weekend. You look at the Tailteann Cup, there was a full round of fixtures, the All-Ireland Football Championship, there was half rounds, and then in hurling, also a full round. And I think next weekend we'll have all football teams, all 32 football teams in action next weekend, other than New York. So, like, do the GA need to, try something different rather than have all matches in one weekend or all teams in one weekend? Or are you happy with the scheduling right now?
No, I'm not happy with the scheduling right now. I think it's been since last year, and like we were talking about it goes into kind of deeper debates when we're talking about, should penalty shootouts be used and everything like that. It just kind of more goes down to a fact that since the GA have redone their calendar, since they've pushed the All-Ireland final dates back and changed everything around, I've just had this overwhelming feeling watching the GA championship over the last few years that it's like they're in a rush to get finished. They're just, come on, go. As much games as we can. Yeah, no replay, no penalty shootout. We're settling this now because we've got another full round of fixtures to get through next weekend. Like, it just seems like they've given themselves no time whatsoever. They have to get this over and done with. It's like, I'm like, there's no preview time. There's no build-up time. There's nothing, there's no time for fans to really get excited about the games. They have a product here in the GAA that, let's be honest, they can't fail with. they can't fail with the GAA, regardless of how poor they market it or regardless of how poor the scheduling is. When Clare play Limerick in the Munster Hurling Championship, it will be sold out. When Dublin play Kerry in the All-Ireland Football Championship, it will be packed, like no matter what. But I don't think they're scheduling it well at all. We've no time for build-up. We've no time for previews. We've no time to get excited about the games. And then when the games are epics, it's like they're in a rush to get them over with. We're on May 26th and the provincial championships are done. Like long done. The Tailteann Cup has already begun. Like, it's like, will you settle down? It's like you're trying to run as fast as you can and you don't really get a chance to really appreciate even a good performance. I feel like that's another thing that kind of annoys me about the GAA. Like when you see that, say, for example, what performance could I give as an example? When you see, say, Mayo's performance last weekend and you're like, wow, that was really impressive. Well, there's another game on the next day, which kind of will often steal the spotlight away because there's so much going on. Like all 32 counties competing across the same weekend. How do you pick who deserves to be on telly there? Or how do you pick who deserves to be streamed there? So I think their scheduling has created so many other problems. Like the whole GAA Go debate. That's because of the scheduling. RTE would be able to show more games if they weren't all at the same time. So GAA Go came in to show the ones that weren't being shown on RTE and then show a few others when they had other programs to show. I just think genuinely their scheduling, in my opinion, needs to be better. I think, again, for anyone watching, me and you, it's like a dead horse at this stage. Me and you, back in January, talked through all of this and we said the GAA needs to be marketed better and scheduled better. The whole calendar needs to be better. This is in hindsight. This isn't us saying this now in May because we've had a few problems. We said this in January. Like, go back and watch that video. We literally called it. We said this needs to be better. And if it was better, you wouldn't see any issues, in my opinion, between GAA Go and RTE. Like, honestly, because everybody would be able to watch the games and every game would get the time in the spotlight that it deserves. And there wouldn't be this feeling of, there wouldn't be this feeling of that we're in a rush to get the championship over with. I don't know if you agree with that.
I probably agree with that to an extent. When you look at the provincial championships, how quickly they got done, in fairness. And the hurling, I think, is in the right schedule at the moment. But having 32 counties play at the same weekend is ridiculous, really. And you talk about, like RT didn't have time to show group games at the Tailteann Cup last weekend. Imagine the next weekend when there's 32 teams involved across both championships.
Imagine the Sunday game that night.
Jesus, it's going to be incredibly rushed. And probably the most ironic thing about it is the Tailteann Cup games that weren't shown, and they were on the Saturday game. You know, a Sunday game version to get all the Saturday games done, and they didn't even have the time to get all the Saturday games on air. You know, it's incredibly rushed. I definitely agree with you. And even you make a very good point about Mayo Kerry, for example. Mayo, brilliant performance against the Kerry team that were all-Ireland champions last year. We should have been talking about that. But it stayed, no disrespect to the hurling. No, like, it was a brilliant day of hurling action. But then the spotlight is off Mayo completely then. You know what? It is rushed. It really is rushed. And just before we get into the games as well, Joe Luke's comments with Joanne Cantwell last week. What do you think of that? Whose side are you on, really? Like, I'm probably more on Joanne's side, to be honest with you. She just asked a legitimate question, to be honest with you. But both sides have a lot of arguments to and for and against, really.
Yeah, and first thing is that I don't like that it's descended so quickly into that, like a petty little pick your team. Like, it's just two brilliant GAA minds, my opinion, having a back and forth, having a debate. My honest opinion is that I thought Donald Lowe came across really arrogant, like in his response. Like, I mentioned it on my podcast with Luke. We did an in-depth breakdown of all the weekend's action. And I was saying, personally, I don't think Donald Lowe, and this is just my opinion, this is not necessarily a hot take, but I don't think he would have spoke to Michael Lester like that. Like, that's just my opinion. You look back at the RTE studio down through the years, you have, say, the Joe Brolly and Pat Spillane. Remember that discussion they were having when Joe Brolly said that if you were to bring someone to Ireland and show them Colin Cooper playing a club game for Dr. Crokes, you would say that's one of the best players in Ireland, and you would say, oh no, he was choking in that game. And then Michael Lester said, okay, Joe, you called the gooch like Colin Cooper, you called him a choker. And then Joe was saying, I didn't call him a choker. And Pat Spillane was saying, yes, you did. And like that debate is up on YouTube. Go look it up. Like, it's a really, really good debate. But my point is Joe Brolly is probably the only pundit more opinionated than Donald Cusack. And Joe Brolly still spoke to Michael Lester with the utmost respect, even though Michael Lester had really put him on the spot. Now, Joanne Cantwell asks a question to Donald Logue, and Donald Logue's first thing is to be like, did you watch? He spoke to her like a child. Did you watch the program? Did you know what it's about? Like, all this. What type of way, if you're trying to not come across a bit arrogant, that's not the way to start it. That's not the way to start it. And I just wonder, because Michael Lester demanded respect pretty much in his presence off every pundit there. Like, did you ever see a pundit speak really cheeky to Michael Lester? No, not to my memory. And I was really surprised when he was speaking to her. Like, it was a real, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I know what I like. The bit where he was like, I don't need any advice in that. Thanks. Like, I just thought, like, that came across so arrogant. And I'm like, even if Donald Logue was in the right there, the way he went about it kind of was like, well, I'm not on your team anyway. Like, so it's like if your team wins the match by being cynical in their tackling. It's like, yeah, maybe you made the better points, but it's just like the way you were so condescending was just, didn't really make me kind of enjoy watching it. But then the other thing is, I enjoyed watching it be a break from the scripted stuff that we see on RTE. Like, I don't care saying this. Sometimes RTE is painfully scripted. Like, particularly, there was one clip, I think it was on the Sunday game a few weeks ago with Damien Lawler and Eamon Fitzmaurice. And Damien was saying, and Eamon, you've noticed some good patterns in Galway's attack. And then Eamon hops up and just walks over to the iPad, like, immediately as soon as he says it. And it was like, God, it literally looks like they auditioned that before they went live. It looks like they had that so planned out. And the best, I like genuinely think this, the best moments of TV that we've seen in the pundit studio is when it goes off script and they just purely let their passion out and they have disagreements and they respect each other. They respect each other's opinions, but they have disagreements. I think that's by far the best. So I didn't like how it quickly descended into this petty little, are you Joanne Cantwell side or are you on Donald Cusack side? Stay out of it. They had a disagreement. They had a debate. Leave it at that. Both of them are really, really good at their jobs. And personally, I hope that Donald Logue's back on as a pundit because I do agree with a lot of his opinions. And I did agree with his comments on how hurling needs to be marketed better. And then I think Joanne is a fantastic presenter. I genuinely think she's brilliant at the job. So I hope to see both of them back.
Yeah, I do as well. And Donald Logue, he makes the show exciting. I will say that. I haven't necessarily agreed with what Donald Logue has said, but at least when you look at some of the pundits nowadays, like you definitely hit the nail on the head. It's incredibly scripted or it's incredibly boring. I know, like, there's some good pundits, there's some good analytical pundits, like Paul Flynn, for example, Colin Cooper, Enda McGinley. Like, there's good analytical pundits. And obviously, as a statsman, I actually love that side of it. But at the same time, you need a bit of controversy as well. And I think the only controversial pundit on RT at the moment is Donald Logue. And he's there now at the moment that you need him.
And also, Matthew, sorry to add, I just want to add this point. What happened when that debate happened? You went on Twitter. What did you see? RT. They were everywhere. Controversy sells. And if you ever wanted to see how obvious that could be for the GAA, there you go.
One thing about Donald Logue I actually didn't like really is he didn't answer the question properly though.
He did the most textbook. I literally mean he did the most textbook. Attack the person that asked you the question. Like, put them on the back foot and say, why did you ask me that? And then completely change the topic. He literally went, why are you talking about that? It's on the hurling show. I was walking into the ground. I walked past the Jimmy Doyle corner. What a day for hurling. It's like, hang on. We've moved so far away from the question that she asked you because you don't want to answer that question. That is literally a Donald Trump tactic. That is literally attack the person that asked you and change the question. That's literally what. So I was like watching. I was in disbelief at how textbook his. Literally just swerved it. He was like, nope. Like, and just got out of there. And then I was surprised when he went back for it. Like when he then was like, and on that point that you made, I don't need any advice. Thank you. So he went back to be petty right at the end. I was like, right, tops it off. I thought he was going back to actually answer the question, but he just went back and just threw in a little dig, and then that was it. I was just like, interesting technique there. And like, I have to say, fair play to Joanne. She didn't back down from him anyway.
Exactly. So, and two more things before we get into the action. I want to talk about like Anthony Daly and Joe Canning's reactions as well. I thought that was gold. I really did.
They literally just they couldn't have been hiding more. Like Joe Canning in particular was just like didn't know where to look.
Oh, that was TV gold really, and Joanne as well. Like she gets a lot of slack, I think, and I think she's actually a very, very good presenter.
I think she's very good.
Yeah,
she's very good.
I think like every presenter, she makes the odd mistake the odd time, really. And if people just flag her up on social media, like social media is dangerous to be honest with you. Like someone with basically with an account can put out an opinion and then it goes viral. You know, so that's the thing with that. But we'll move on to the action. There was a lot of stuff to talk about. Even the Dublin and Cork Foundation and the disgrace that was the J not allowing the sponsors and his jerseys. But we obviously don't have time to talk about that. But what we will say, that is an utter disgrace what happened last Sunday, and the GA should really be ashamed of themselves not doing that. But anyway, we'll move on to the action, and we'll start off with the football, and we'll start off with my own County Cork going to Park Talton to face Louth at 3:00 on Saturday in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship Group 1. This is the group with Mayo and Kerry. So you'd imagine whoever wins this game will be getting third in the group, and it's vital for these two sides.
Oh, hugely important, because I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I would be stunned if either of these two beat Mayo or Kerry. I genuinely would be. So this is the game that no doubt both teams would have had their eye on. Like Louth, like this is the point that I'm talking about. How much did Louth believe that they were going to beat Dublin in that Leinster final? Or like, did Louth? Okay, I do believe that Louth saw a path to victory, but would they have had their eye on Cork at all? Do you think?
Like I've been listening to the Loaded Pro podcast. It's a very good podcast run by Dan Bannon. It's on Patreon if you haven't checked it out already. But like he was making the point as well. Like they wouldn't have said it to the media or anything like that we're going to lose to Dublin, because that just would have been backwards talking away. And Mickey Hart isn't that kind of manager to say we're basically waving the white flag and losing to Dublin. And there was some Louth fans that believed they could, and there was no reason why they couldn't. When you look at the league form, when they were close to Dublin in the league without Samuel Roy, there was a lot of aspects to that to suggest Louth would win the game against Dublin. So honestly, like it's a hard one, but I would honestly think that Louth wouldn't have thought about the Cork game. They would have been focused on the Dublin game. That's my honest opinion, anyway. Honest.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think that Louth definitely saw a path to victory and would have wanted to pull that off. And when you look at the support that they brought with them, I think there was a cautious optimism before that game. Like people were slowly, okay, Dublin aren't what they used to be. And then the way Louth came out and just went man to man on Dublin was just, okay, where you just completely derailed any chance that you had. It's like they watched what Kildare did last year and went, okay, let's just do that. This game, I really think they should go back to what got them to the level in Division 2 in the first place. Cork have the forwards to blow them away in a similar way that Dublin did. And people would say that Cork's forward line is really, really good. Like Stephen Sherlock, Brian Hurley, Players like that can rip you apart. And like even Chris Oak-Jones, Connor Corbett, these lads, hugely impressive for me throughout the Allianz League. And while you're saying that, Louth did well against Dublin in the league, Cork should have beaten Dublin in the league. Brian Hurley's shot, if O'Hanlon doesn't push that onto the crossbar, Cork beat Dublin in a late smash and grab. So it's one of those where, again, we'll throw it back to you because, like, obviously we'll debate who we think is going to win. How much of an impact do you think the league game has on this?
It's hard to know, because at the same time, you'd look at it in black and white and say, oh, Louth beat Cork. But when you look at the details of that game, Cork had Daniel O'Mahony sent off just before half time. And when you look at the pattern of the game, Stephen Sherlock missed a chance. I think he slipped in front of goal. And then down the other end, Louth scored a rebounded penalty. And instantly, that's a 6-point swing. So there was a lot of things that went for Louth that day up in RD. So it's going to be very, very tough to call that way. But on your point about Stephen Sherlock, he's dropped for this game.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't want to. Yeah, he's dropped from the Cork team. Brian Hurley is back from injury, and it's a full forward line of Sean Powder, Brian Hurley, and Chris Oak-Jones. They're Cork a bit 4 changes from the game against Clare. So does that shock you in any way, having Sherlock not there?
Yes, absolutely. He was their nailed on number 15, their free taker, their top scorer last year. Why would he be dropped? Was he terrible against Clare, in your opinion?
He scored 10 points. So
exactly. He must be carrying an injury or something.
The thing is, people in Cork are actually saying that Sherlock and Brian Hurley can't play with each other, which I think, look, other counties have manoeuvred this. Like, you look at Galway, for example, Comer and Walsh can play in the same team, Finnerty can play in the same team. With Dublin, you look at Paul Mannion and Conor Callaghan can play in the same team. You look at Kerry with David Clifford and Sean O'Shea. So why can't Sherlock and Hurley? I actually don't get that. As a Cork fan, I don't know what you think about that yourself.
You'd wonder, is it a personal thing? Like, do they not like each other? Or I don't know. I actually don't know. Is it that they both want to be the main man? Like that type of thing? It's a really hard one to tell, but I'm stunned that he's not in the starting team. Like that, genuinely, I'm like, why? He's your best forward, in my opinion. Why would you not start Stephen Sherlock? But I still think that forward line for Cork, Sean Powell is another one that they could do serious damage to the Louth defence. Maybe they're preparing for Louth to be a bit more defensive. But I'm still there, like, look, Sherlock's your free taker. If Louth set up hugely defensive, you need a guy on the pitch that will make them pay for every foul that they commit, if you get what I mean. Like, I'll give you the perfect example. Dublin Donegal in 2011, when Donegal literally parked the whole bus and the rest across their defence, and Dublin lived off the free kicks until they could actually, get at Donegal from play. Bernard Brogan and Stephen Cluxton nailed every free that Donegal basically gave to Dublin just to keep Dublin alive. If Louth set up defensively and they can foul the Cork team knowing that, okay, it's not Stephen Sherlock on the frees, so it might not be a guy who's going to nail them. Like, who takes the frees if Sherlock doesn't?
Brian Hurley.
Brian, is he as good?
Well, the thing is with Brian, on frees, I actually think Sherlock's better on frees. But from open play, from this season, from open play, you'd argue Brian Hurley, because this is a stat actually that has actually gone on my brain in the last few weeks, working for a West Cork newspaper at the moment. In the last 3 games that Cork have had without Brian Hurley in the team, against Louth, Derry and Clare, Brian Hurley's been injured in all those games, obviously. Cork have lost 2 of those games and drawn 1. And even the draw was a last-minute goal for Ian Maguire against Derry. So Brian Hurley could be a common denominator here. And even in the previous 4 games where Hurley was playing, Cork won 3 and lost 1. And the one they lost, you mentioned earlier, with David O'Hanlon tipping the ball onto the post. So Brian Hurley is a big player.
Oh, he's a fantastic player. But I'd be looking at that thinking, why couldn't they not play together? But we'll see if Sherlock comes on, which I think he will. Like, he has to. Then I still think that Cork have too strong a forward line if Louth do go man-to-man. So I would be encouraging Louth to sit a bit deeper this time. Start doing what you did in the league again. Slow build up. You control the game. Make Cork play your game. Don't leave it into their hands, because Cork have the forward line to hurt you. That being said, I have tipped Cork to win this game. I think that their forward line, as I mentioned, hugely talented. That's going to be one of the main reasons. I think if Daniel O'Mahony stays on the pitch for the whole game and goes on to a Sam Mulroy, I think he could give him a really tough day at the office, because O'Mahony, I think, is an outstanding man marker.
I will go back at you on that. I know, man, he's a brilliant player. He got Sigerson Cup Player of the Year, and deservedly so, the upcoming player. But the last game, he was on Keelan Sexton, and Keelan Sexton scored 4 points for play. So,
yeah,
you know,
could have been an
what do you
off
think?
day, though. I know, but I still think him getting sent off, no doubt, was a huge reason as to why Louth won, I think.
Maybe so. And another thing, Sean Meehan's in the team as well. Rory Maguire's out injured, but Meehan's as good a player as well. So, yeah, you'd probably have to go for Cork, but tentatively, you look at Louth's league form. If they lose this,
Yeah.
it's kind of work going down the drain if they just lose this game against Cork, from a Louth point of view, anyway.
From a Louth point of view, yeah, but I mean, how many teams have we seen like be fantastic in the league and then do nothing in the championship? Like the harsh thing is when people talk about, you know, team, like, for example, I think what's a good example of a team that I can think of that looked really good. Like, for example, when Meath got promoted to Division 1, I think it was 2018, they got promoted to Division 1. They did nothing in that year's championship. I think they got knocked out by Longford, I think it was, in that year's championship in Leinster, and just did nothing in the rest. And then they got relegated from the league that year with 7 losses out of 7. So it's just like that type of thing of, just because a team looked good in the league really doesn't mean anything. And just this time next year, it might have completely changed. How many examples do I have to list out for you? Carlow, Leitrim, like, of teams that got promoted, looked really good, or made a strong run and looked really good, and then just didn't really amount to anything in the championship. So it's one of those things where we are going to see now, you know, how much they can make that count. Like, in terms of, look, in the Leinster Championship, they made it count for a lot. You know, their victory over Offaly was fantastic. That was, you know, an amazing day out. Their victory over Westmeath was, in my opinion, even more impressive, considering where they were at half-time. They fought back and managed to take that game by the scruff of the neck. But I think Cork just have a little bit more ability up front. I think Louth rely a lot more on their game plan. And if they even think about abandoning that game plan in this game against Cork, I think they are going to lose. I think if they go man-to-man, I think Cork have the better players. If they go with their system, I think they have a way better chance of winning. But I probably will just shade it to Cork.
You've given me a lot of confidence now, Seamus, with going for a Cork win. Like, it's the hope that kills you, really. It is the hope that kills you.
I got all but one right last weekend. And I have a guess which one I got wrong. Westmeath, Wexford. Well, I'd be literally the smartest GA man of all time if I had to call that one.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, you know what, I'm going to back Cork as well, but at the same time, it's kind of just the hope that kills you and stuff like that. And on your previous point, Seamus, about the league, someone commented there, and some team, I was thinking Derry in the 2014 league, they got to the Division 1 final that year, and they lost to Longford in the qualifiers. So it does happen.
Yeah. And then, speaking of that, they took a hammering from Dublin in that 2014 league final, and their confidence was shot to pieces after that. And who just took a hammering off Dublin in the final?
Louth.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we have seen over the last 10 years, it's been incredibly difficult for teams to pull themselves back after a hammering in the provincial final. It has been. Like, look at Clare. Clare took a battering off Kerry in the Munster final, when apparently they were on top of the world a few weeks earlier, having beaten Cork to potentially put themselves into the All-Ireland series. Then they beat Limerick in the semi-final. Then they were, you know, qualified, everything, you know, they're going to give Kerry a right good rattle. One awful performance and an absolute hammering later. Now they lose to a Donegal side that I genuinely thought could lose to anybody. So watch that space. The only other example is, well, look at Sligo. Take a leaf out of Sligo's book. You know, they bounced back from a tough provincial final to get a draw against Kildare. And now it's up to Louth to see if they can do the same against Cork. But I would probably shade it to Cork still.
Probably go for Cork as well, but the less said we about Clare being in the Tailteann Cup, the better, because a lot of complaints about that. So we'll move swiftly on about that, and we'll move on to the next game in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship, and it is Armagh against Westmeath at 4:45 in Group 2, live on GAA. Obviously, Galway won the first game of this group last weekend, beating Tyrone by 3 points, but you'd have to expect Armagh to win this game despite the comments of David Brady himself.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I don't really know why he said that. I'm not trying to sound dismissive of, but there's no way Westmeath beat Armagh away from home in the athletic grounds. No way. Like, just Armagh win this game. Like, I think this doesn't need to be too long of one. I like Westmeath have outstanding forwards. Don't get me wrong. John Heslin, Luke Loughlin, like Kieran Martin, Ronan O'Toole. But I'm pretty sure Kieran Martin's injured, isn't he?
I think he is, yeah.
Yeah, like they're not even at full strength. They would need to be at full strength. Look, they are facing an Armagh side that is heartbroken after the Ulster final, but it's an Armagh side that will look at that and say, do you know what? We lost on penalties. Like, you can't really say, okay, well, we were beaten out the gate in that Ulster final. Like, they lost on penalties, and I think they're going to fight back in this one. I think Armagh will put Westmeath to the sword, kind of in a way of like a frustration about how they lost the Ulster final. I can see it being a really tough day for Westmeath, because look, it's a Westmeath side that failed to get out of Division 3, that blew a huge halftime lead against Louth, and now staring down the barrel of a group with Armagh, with Derry. No, not with Derry, sorry. Who else in that group?
Galway and Tyrone.
Oh, that's a tough group. That's a tough group. And yeah, like I can see nothing other than an Armagh win here.
Yes, might have to go for Armagh as well. And before we get on to the next game, Westmeath in general, like you said a few weeks ago, and I said I wasn't going to talk, but we will about the Tailteann Cup. The Westmeath won that competition last year, and they now go into the All-Ireland series. And as you mentioned there, Galway, Tyrone, Armagh, they're going to get 3 hammerings more than likely. Mm-hmm. So, like, is there a way to fix this, like, for Westmeath in general? Because, like, it's a spite winning a Tailteann Cup last year. They're most likely going to get their confidence knocked back a ton this year, despite winning a major trophy last season.
Yeah, like that's one of the harshest things, and that is, like, there is too big a gap. Like, there's fantastic teams like Westmeath that then when they manage to get to play the teams, it's still a massive jump up. It's a massive jump up from Division 3 to the top of Division 2. A massive jump up. And this is what we're talking about. This is an Armagh side that, yes, they got relegated from Division 1, but they were competitive right down to the last minute. And there were games that Armagh had that I think they should have won over their Division 1 run, which could have changed things. They should have beaten Galway in that game. That's the one that jumps out to me, that I'm like, they really should have won that one. And other results that, like the Mayo one, that was there for them at stages of that game. Just moments where they let their eye off the ball, but they're still a Division 1 team, in my opinion. They're still a team that can compete with the best of the best. And that's why it's such a jump up for Westmeath to all of a sudden go from, you know, winning a Tailteann Cup. And let's be honest, they were underdogs against Cavan in that game. And they still managed to, you know, pull it off. But again, it's another jump up to Armagh, in my opinion. And this is going to be a really, really difficult day. And on fixing it, yeah, I think we need to. I really do think we need to. Again, like, here we go again. Three systems, in my opinion: senior, intermediate, junior. And yes, that wouldn't erase all of the problems. It definitely wouldn't erase all of the problems. But in my opinion, there are 3 levels. Westmeath, in my opinion, are in the second tier of teams. They are too good for, in my opinion, they are too good for your Waterfords, for your Londons. They are too good for them. But I think they are still a level below your Kerrys, your Dublins, your Mayos, and your Armaghs.
Yeah, good point. All right. And we'll see how that progresses in the next few weeks with Westmeath in general, but Armagh should win that game indeed. We'll move on to the other game on GAA that day at 7 p.m. in Group 4, Derry against Monaghan on GAA, obviously in Celtic Park on Saturday evening. And the other game in this group, Donegal beat Clare, as Seamus mentioned earlier on, by 4 points. Last time out, probably shockingly so. But you have to expect both of these sides to be in the top 2. But They met in the first stages of the championship in the semi-finals of Ulster. Derry obviously giving them an absolute hammering. Shane McGuigan was absolutely outstanding. Their kicking was incredible. So you probably have to expect Derry to hammer Monaghan this game once again, or would you?
It's an interesting one. I think first of all, the group has already gone differently to how I would have anticipated. I really, really thought Clare were going to beat Donegal in that game. I really thought, look, Clare, whatever happened in the Munster final has happened in the Munster final. It's still a happy camp. It's still a team that, you know, has defied the odds time and time again. Like in terms of getting into the All-Ireland series and how long they stayed up in Division 2 when year after year people said this is the year that they go down. I was thinking, well, this is their golden ticket to getting out of the All-Ireland group stages, a demoralised Donegal side at home. And they were in a really good position in that game. And I genuinely thought that they were going to kick on. But fair play to Donegal. They found the will to win there somewhere in a season that has been really, really bleak for them. So that's definitely upset. But like in turn, that's upset because I fully thought Clare were going to win that game. And now you're looking at this one of a Derry side that are Ulster champions now back to back against Monaghan. And it's really, really hard. I agree with what you said. It's really, really hard to wipe from your brain just how easy that first game was between the two teams. Just how easy it was. McManus held scoreless from play. And like McCluskey's goal, everything about Derry that day was just perfect. 121 they scored. It's hard to wipe that from your head.
It is, but at the same time, like Monaghan have a very impressive player back into the team for the first time in a long while. Ryan McInnesby is coming back into the team. I think he's straight into the forward line. So could he make a difference to this Monaghan team? And another thing as well, would McManus be picked up by McCaig again?
Oh yeah, McManus is going to get the Christy McCaig treatment once again. And then I just like McInnesby, don't get me wrong, fabulous player, but he's like another one that's like very similar to your Ryan O'Toole's, your Carl O'Connell's, as in another runner with, you know, full of energy, full of pace, full of momentum, fantastic footballer. But in my opinion, he's not a Conor McManus, a Jack McCarron, somebody that can win a game on his own. I think he's a fabulous player, but I think Derry will be ready for Monaghan again. I think Derry have Monaghan's number. Look, obviously, like the situation has changed for Derry now a lot since that game against Monaghan. So maybe it will be different. And Monaghan obviously will be hurting from that Ulster game because, let's be honest, they let themselves down that day. They performed nowhere near the level that we've seen them perform at. Maybe they were just wrecked after the Tyrone game. Maybe they're absolutely exhausted after that. They've had a break. They've had time to look at that game, analyze that game, and hey, if it was hurting them, they have a perfect chance to go and do something about it now.
Exactly. So, and someone in the comments actually said that McManus is dropped to the bench. So another dropped. That's a bit of a surprise.
Make a starting 15 of all the lads that are dropped. We've already got Stephen Sherlock and Conor McManus in our full forward line.
Jesus,
not bad. We'll have David O'Hanlon in goal. We have a good team shaping up nicely.
Yeah, rejects 15. Yeah, that's what we call it. I'm looking now, Jack McCarron, Gary Mohan, and Roy McInnesby. That's the full forward line we're running against Derry. Apologies for that. I didn't notice that. I was working all day, so it's not about that, Monaghan fans. But like for Derry, like they won Ulster penalties, as we mentioned earlier, against Armagh. They beat Monaghan quite comprehensively for Bala as well. Could they be all-Ireland contenders, Derry? Like, you look at the teams in this group in particular, Monaghan, Donegal, Clare, no disrespect, but Derry should be better than all those three teams in general. So, like, are Derry a top-level team, especially after being in an all-Ireland semi-final themselves last season?
They have the ability to do it. They have the players to do it. But the only thing that is holding me back from thinking that Derry can win the All-Ireland title is the fact that I've only seen them twice go up against elite teams in Croke Park, Galway and Dublin, and both times they've been blown away. Like, both times they've been blown away. I haven't seen them do it against a top side in Croke Park. So when they do that, if they translate their system into Croke Park and manage to go toe-to-toe with a top side there, yeah, I'm converted then. I fully believe they're All-Ireland contenders. But until I see them go toe-to-toe with a Mayo or a Kerry or a Galway or a Dublin in Croke Park and beat them there, I'm not convinced, because we saw how defensive teams in the past have struggled when they've got to Croke Park because of the massive open pitch. And it's hard now because it's not like what it was before. When you have defensive systems, look at how Dublin changed the game in 2017 against Tyrone when they just boxed them in for the entire game and Tyrone couldn't get out of their own half. Like, the game has changed. Derry's system against Monaghan was really interesting because everybody defended but everybody attacked. And it looked really, really promising because it was very reminiscent of what Jim McGuinness had done with Donegal in 2012, where the first year he made them really hard to beat. The second year he had them, the fittest team in Ireland, attacking at 100 miles an hour the minute they turned you over. And to put up, I think, what was it? They put up, I think it was 338. Oh no, 438 they'd scored in their 2 games running up to the Ulster final. Like, hugely impressive attacking. They scored low in the Ulster final. What did they only get? They only got 110 over the course of the game, wasn't it? Like, so, like, their scoring dropped off dramatically in that Ulster final against an Armagh defense I don't even think is that good. So, like, this game, can they hit those heights again in this championship? Who knows?
We'll have to see, but we are both going for a Derry win in this game. It remains to be seen if they are All-Ireland contenders. And speaking of All-Ireland contenders, Dublin against Roscommon, well, you have to say Dublin are probably All-Ireland contenders. Roscommon have the players to do so, but do they have the mentality? We'll have to see. But this game is on at 4 o'clock on Go in Croke Park in Group 3. And as you mentioned earlier, with Sligo Kildare drawing, like, you'd have to imagine Sligo Kildare are a bit off these 2 teams. But Dublin have the upper hand in Croke Park against many teams, and Roscommon's included in that bracket.
Yeah, and look, for Roscommon going here, just go here and put up a performance, because the last few times Roscommon have come to Croke Park, the main example that I can think of off the top of my head is the 2018 Super 8s game. Or was it 2019, I believe? 2019. And they got destroyed. They got absolutely ripped apart. And it was a tough game to watch, knowing how good some of those Roscommon lads are, like Enda Smith and Kieran Murta and players like that. To watch them just get ripped apart was kind of hard to watch. But look, that was a Dublin team about to go on and do the 5 in a row. So it was probably the best team that we've ever seen in Gaelic football. So times have changed. That Dublin team is not what it was. But it is a Dublin side that just put 5 goals past a Louth team that was tipped by a lot of people to give them some problems. So it is, but it is also a Dublin side who scraped a 2-point victory against Kildare and looked wholly unconvincing in that game. And like, I've seen a lot of people say that if Davy Burke was a manager at Kildare, that they would have had a better chance of winning. Well, he's a manager of Roscommon, and you could argue Roscommon have just as good players as Kildare do, if not better. So we will have a real insight now into how Davy Burke gets on against Dublin in this game. And I think it will not be a blowout. I don't think Dublin will win by 15, 16 points, but I do think Dublin will probably win by about 5 or 6. But I do think Davy Burke will give Dublin a run for his money with this Roscommon side.
He should do in general. That's the thing. Like, you mentioned the Roscommon players that they have, and probably they do have better players than Kildare. You look at Dermot Murta, Keane McKeown, Enda Smith, Kieran Murta, Ben O'Carroll, Donny Smith. That's just their full forward line. Their 6 forwards are starting against Dublin. Like, you look at Niall Daly at wing back, Dylan Rowan, Brian Stack at full back. Like, that's a very good team, very strong Roscommon team. And I just wonder, and even the Clare game last year, they should have won that game in any other day, and they lost in Croke Park. Is it a mentality thing with Roscommon in a way? Because every time they come up to Croke Park, they just fail for everyone to see. So, like, it's going to be difficult for Roscommon to overcome that. But do you think Davy Burke is the right manager for them to change their mentality a bit?
Yeah, I would say so, because he's a young lad with a serious chip on his shoulder, in my opinion. I think he wants to prove that he's one of the best managers in Ireland. And I think him bringing that attitude to this Roscommon side, I think, is absolutely vital, because you look at, the results that they put up at the start of the league, that looked like a team with a chip on their shoulder. And you looked at it and said, look, Davy Burke is translating this now into this Roscommon side, and they stayed up in Division 1 very comfortably. And can he, again, we're talking about this with the Louth and Cork game, can we translate that from the league into the championship? It remains to be seen. Like, it's one of those where we just don't know. I wouldn't say we know. We assume that Dublin will probably win this game. But I think Roscommon and how well they perform in this game will show us a lot for the future of this Davy Burke project with Roscommon. Because we have seen Roscommon look really, really good over the last few years. Kevin McStay with Roscommon, Connacht Championship, got to the quarterfinal, drew at Mayo in a game that they could have won. How did the replay go? Ripped to shreds. Then, rinse over to Anthony Cunningham, Connacht title, get to the Super 8s. What happens? Ripped to shreds. So it's like we've seen Roscommon now twice under different managers look really, really impressive in the Connacht Championship and in the league. And then when it came time to, show what they're really about on the championship stage, especially in Croke Park, they've been ripped to shreds. So please don't let that be the case this year. Don't let that be the case this year. Go to Croke Park, give it what you've got against Dublin, because this Dublin team is not invincible. It's not bulletproof. And they have actually lost that sheen of invincibility that they had. Like, even though Dublin beat Louth with that resounding scoreline, I still don't think that people think that Dublin are unbeatable. Like, people think that this Dublin side is beatable. And I think Roscommon could shine a light on some potential issues in the Dublin team. Like, who are Dublin going to put on Enda Smith? Who will they put on Kieran Murta? Like, things like that will make the game very interesting.
Exactly. So, a comment coming in here about Roscommon playing Division 1 teams and Dublin playing only Division 2 teams. Do you think that could make an impact in a way in general? Or do you think, as you mentioned earlier on the chat, that the league is a bit irrelevant when it comes to this?
Well, it's the type of thing where it helps you get used to your level. But I do think that if you're bouncing between Division 1 and Division 2, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. And last few years, All-Ireland finalists last year, Galway, where did they play the league? They got promoted from Division 2. 2021 All-Ireland finalists, Mayo, where did they get promoted from? Division 2. Like, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you can't compete with the big boys if you just got promoted from Division 2. It's like Dublin, yes, they were playing in Division 2, but you cannot tell me that this Dublin side doesn't have experience playing against the top teams. Like, they have more experience playing against the top teams than Roscommon do, especially in Croke Park.
Are you suggesting now that Dublin could reach the All-Ireland final? Look at that stat.
I think they definitely could reach the All-Ireland final, depending on how the draw goes. I'm not as confident in this Dublin team as I've been in other Dublin teams in the past. I still think there's ways to get at us, but I don't think there's a clear top team in the country right now. I would have probably put Kerry at the top. I did tip Kerry to retain their title, but seeing how Mayo just outclassed them in that game, but then how also Mayo lost to Roscommon and now we're tipping Dublin to beat Roscommon. It just shows me that there is no top team in my opinion. As in, I don't mean that as I think there's a number of top sides, but I don't think there's a clear, obvious candidate that you would put your house on to win the All-Ireland, which is really refreshing, because the last few years Dublin had it completely gridlocked, particularly in their 4 in a row. Their 5th All-Ireland was where it started to get a bit more interesting. And then obviously losing it to Mayo in 2021. But I think this year is probably the most open it's been in a long, long time. So I think Dublin could get to the final. And I actually do think we could win the All-Ireland, but I wouldn't be putting my house on it.
Yeah, it should be interesting in the next few weeks to see if Dublin progress. We will be expecting Dublin to win the game against Roscommon at least. And we will move on to hurling now. A huge weekend in hurling, mostly on the Sunday. We will move on to the Joe McDonagh Cup Final in just a bit. But the first game, and this is literally winner takes all. Limerick against Cork in the Gaelic grounds, 4 p.m. RT2. The situation here, Limerick have to win. Simply, they have to win this game when you look at points difference and everything like that. For Cork, anything other than a loss will be enough. If they draw or win, they'll be through to the next round. So this is huge pressure on the All-Ireland champions in this game. And when you look at the game against Tipperary, they kind of felt that pressure as well. And we could be seeing the All-Ireland champions go out of the championship at the group stages, which is absolutely remarkable.
Exactly. If you'd have said that at the start, if you were to say that going into this week, Wexford are going to potentially be relegated to the Joe McDonagh Cup and Limerick are potentially going to be knocked out of the All-Ireland Championship, Like, I wonder what the odds would have been on that at the start of the season. But yeah, it's crazy. And to make it a whole interesting and engaging storyline, Limerick clinching their 2 in a row in 2021. They put in a masterful performance against Cork. And to be honest, I'd say that was a tough day to be a Cork fan because Limerick were so imperious that day and looked unbeatable. And now, not even 2 years later, Cork have a chance to stop Limerick doing the 4 in a row that Cork are one of the only hurling counties to have done. Limerick have only got to 3 ever. Cork have the chance to stop them getting a chance to make it 4. What a storyline that could be.
Could be a big storyline, all right. And when you look at the changes on both sides, actually, Limerick have made no changes as far as I know for the Tipperary game. Cork have made 3 changes. Shane Kingston's come in, Tim O'Mahony has come in, and they've come in both in place of Conor Cahalane and Conor Lehan, while Ger Millerick has come in place of Tommy O'Connell, which, to be honest, like Ger Millerick did a better job than Tony Kelly in the second half than Tommy O'Connell did probably in the first half. So, like, Cork are definitely, Pat Ryan is definitely stamping his authority, making the changes. Like Shane Kingston in particular, I think adding him to the starting 15 is going to be big.
I like that change a lot because, like, look at my podcast there last week. I said Cork need to put Shane Kingston onto Mike Casey the same way Tipperary put Jake Morris onto Mike Casey. A fast, direct, powerful runner that can go for goal quite quickly because he caused Mike Casey a lot of problems in that game. And I was saying, if Cork go with a full forward line of Patrick Horgan and Seamus Harnedy on Mike Casey and Dan Morrissey, I give up. Because that just shows that they just weren't watching the game. It was so clear that someone with pace, power, direct running will cause Mike Casey a lot of problems. Whereas somebody who's more based on power and skill is perfect for him to mark. Like, it's perfect for him to mark a Patrick Horgan or a Seamus Harnedy, someone who's really strong, like powerful, but not that quick. And I feel like that's a perfect person for Mike Casey, to mark, and Dan Morrissey to mark. So the fact that Shane Kingston is in, I really, really find that a promising switch. Ger Millerick, completely agree with you. I think he did a great job on Tony Kelly in the second half. Kelly's influence kind of minimized a little bit when Millerick went on to him. In the first half with O'Connell on him, he was kind of doing what he wanted in that first half. And I do see Tommy O'Connell as kind of more of a midfielder. So I kind of do like that switch of putting Millerick back in there. Tim O'Mahony, I find interesting. He's in the forwards. Pat Ryan hadn't showed any real interest of putting him in the forward. So I do wonder what that's about. Is he in there to mark Barry Nash?
Or Kyle Hayes?
Or Kyle Hayes, yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, a bit like what Alan Tynan did last week, actually, just stopping Kyle Hayes' influence in the game, which, in fairness, Alan Tynan did an absolutely incredible job at. So
yeah, that actually could be a masterstroke, that Pat Ryan is really clearly watching the other games and saying, well, what worked for this team? Like that type of thing.
Maybe so, and he's putting Darragh Fitzgibbon at centre forward while Luke Mee goes into midfield. So do you think that's a good move in particular? I know Fitzgibbon is renowned as a midfielder, but to put him further up the pitch as well, to add, more threat in that forward line as well. So, like, he's going for this, Pat Ryan.
Yeah, and it's clear that he's probably looked at Declan Hannon and thought, like, well, what happened? The one game where I saw Declan Hannon look the most vulnerable was the 2021 Munster final against Tipperary, where Jason Ford played centre forward and hung off him and scored points at will. Maybe they're trying to do something similar with Darragh Fitzgibbon.
Maybe so. And you'd have to think at the other end, Aaron Gallant, who was scored 6 points last year, had a 75% shot accuracy, which was incredible. You'd have to imagine maybe Millerick, possibly Sean O'Donoghue could go on him. And O'Donoghue's just back. Like O'Donoghue and Gallant, that'll be incredible.
That's a battle. That's a battle and a half. I imagine Millerick, if I had to guess, if Limerick don't make any changes, so Cian Lynch is starting, is he?
Cian Lynch starting. So
I imagine Millerick might go on to Cian Lynch, and then they could leave Kieran Joyce kind of mopping up around the defence.
Possibly so, like Rob Downey onto Garrett Hagerty, maybe.
Yes, I think that's what they'll do. And then Millerick onto Lynch. I'd maybe Kieran Joyce on Tom Morrissey either, like matchup for matchup. that could be an interesting battle. Niall O'Leary, is he in the other corner?
He's in the other corner, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think he'll go toe to toe with Peter Casey.
Yeah. And
Flanagan and Damien Callahan. Yeah, I actually think they match up nicely.
So yeah, it's the matchups are set. It's going to be an incredible encounter. But prediction time. Who are you seeing to win this game? It's going to be a tough one.
Oh, it's so hard to call. I genuinely mean this. I would not be surprised, and it's the most sit on the fence answer ever. I would not be surprised if either of them pull this game off. I would not be surprised if it even ends a draw, which obviously suits Cork. But there's part of my brain that just can't wrap my head around Limerick being knocked out this early. And whoever was playing them in this game, I think would be in trouble. If it was Clare, I think they'd be in trouble. If it was Tip, I think they'd be in trouble. If it was Waterford, I think they'd be in trouble. Limerick's backs are against the wall. And if you think they're not going down without a fight, you're hugely mistaken, because look at how they fought against Tipperary when they were not performing well. Think of some of the wides they hit. Mulcahy, Hegarty, all such uncharacteristic misses, and yet they still kept winning puckouts, kept driving forward, kept making chances, kept pushing until something came off, and they nearly got the win. So I think if they were ever going to fold and give up, I think it would have been in that game against Tipperary, and they still fought and got something out of that game. So the fight is still there in them. So I'm going to go for Limerick to get over the line by a point or two and just about keep the championship alive. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if Cork do it, but I just think Cork are so early in the Pat Ryan era as well. It's a big ask for them to beat a Limerick side who are fighting for their lives.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think it's a situation Cork are playing well at the moment. They're showing fight. Like, even when they weren't performing well against Clare last day, they nearly pulled that out of the bag. But it's just this Limerick team. I'm the same boat as you. I can't imagine Limerick being out so early in the championship. So that for that reason, I have to go for Limerick as well. But Cork,
I have a hot take as well about Limerick, actually, if you want to hear. I was thinking about it there, and I was like, there's an argument that this Limerick run of results is possibly now, and I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is by any stretch of the imagination, but it is definitely one of, if not the most impressive run of results that we've ever seen from a team being so damn good. Because you look at all the other reigns of dominance that we've had. You look at Dublin's 6 in a row and Kilkenny's 4 in a row. Let's look at them too. Dublin, not a glove laid on them in Leinster. They could play B teams in the Leinster Championship up until the Leinster final and probably still play a B team in the Leinster final and win it. Like, I think there was some stat that only in 2021 did a team get within 10 points of them or something on that run in the Leinster Championship. And it was only when they got to the final four that then things got intense, that then things got difficult. But up until then, they were completely able to take their foot off the gas. Same thing for Kilkenny in the Leinster Championship. Before 2009, there was no Galway in the Leinster Championship. So in 06, 07 and 08, when Kilkenny won Leinster, the teams that they would have had to play was an Offaly team that had completely fallen off a cliff. Dublin, who are nowhere near the level that they're even at today. And Wexford, who were not at the pace either that they used to be at. They were in a bit of a slump at that time. So Kilkenny pretty much had Leinster easy up until 2009 when Galway joined. And then they made it way more interesting. And then Kilkenny, exactly the same as Dublin, their first serious test came in the semi-finals. Whereas you look at Limerick, from minute go, they have had a target on their back from the best teams in Ireland, apart from themselves. Like Clare, Tip, Cork, Waterford, who have all been at such ridiculously high levels over the last few years. And they've had a target on their back. Look how good teams have been and still not beaten them. You've got Clare, amazing performances last year, still couldn't beat Limerick. Kilkenny scoring 226 in an All-Ireland final, still couldn't beat Limerick. Like, I think there's an argument that because every single championship game Limerick have played has been against an elite team, there's almost an argument that this would have been a harder run to put together because it's over as well, a shorter space of time because the championship is so packed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd agree with you as well. When you look at other teams like Kilkenny, Dublin, even Kerry back in the 80s, you didn't have to play a down number of games as well. When you look at Limerick, that's guaranteed maybe 7 games a year to win an All-Ireland nowadays. Like, it's incredible, really. And Limerick should be applauded. Even if they lose to Cork now on Sunday, they should be applauded as one of the greatest teams in history, in my opinion. Even this early in their development. They're an incredible, incredible side, but we'd still predict that Limerick will stay in the championship for yet another season. But for Cork, and while we're on it, we'll move on to Tip and Waterford in a minute. But while we're on Cork, they're out of the championship, obviously, with our predictions. I posed this argument to Aaron from GA Fan TV as well. Should there be a playoff between 4th in Munster and 3rd in Leinster and vice versa as well? Because I don't know about you, Seamus, but having Dublin in the championship further on than Cork and Offaly and Carlow as well for the Joe McDonagh further on than Cork as well, it doesn't really bode well for having the best teams at the best stages in the hurling, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, and like the reality is that I think Cork would beat Dublin. Like, it's just speaking fully honestly, I don't mean to insult any Dublin fans listening, but I just feel like Cork are better than Dublin right now in the hurling. And yeah, I mean, there's an argument there. It would definitely be insulting to a lot of Leinster hurling people, though, if they were to do that. Like, I remember Brian Cody making the point that, I remember if Kerry were on the brink of getting promoted, that they would go into the Leinster Championship, and Cody was saying, well, why can't they go into the Munster Championship? The province that they're in. And it was an interesting point to look at, but it was like, I just go back to that point. Remember, yourself and Aaron came on my podcast and we made a combined provincial team. And our conclusion from that was I distinctly remember you saying it would be interesting if we made a Munster B team and we'll see who would have won that game. Like, a genuine, but the argument stands, it would be a really close match between the B team of Munster and the A team of Leinster. And that's enough when you're talking about the quality of the competition. So the fact that Dublin do go further than Cork, when I do think Cork would beat Dublin if they played each other right now. Yeah, I get the angle that you're coming from there.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of thoughts about this, especially after this weekend when one of Cork, Limerick, or Tipperary are not going to go out of the championship anyway. This unless some ridiculous amount of results happen, and we'll go on to the next game, Tipperary and Waterford. For Tipperary to go out of the All Ireland, I think anyway. I looked at this on GA League tables. For Tipperary to go out of the championship, Waterford need to beat Limerick by 5, beat Tipperary by 5 points in Semple Stadium, and Limerick and Cork need to draw. Question, Seamus, is that happening?
Yes, put money down on it, right? No, absolutely no chance. Waterford, to me, just particularly in the last game that they played, they just looked dejected against Clare. They just looked like they had no motivation. I think that the reality is here's some hard facts that they won't like. They haven't scored a goal yet in the championship. They haven't broke 20 points yet in the championship. Like, for a Munster hurling team, that's pretty bad. I can't lie. A team that was considered All-Ireland contenders last year, that's pretty bad. They haven't had a performance this year that's impressed me. That's another thing. Would you agree with that? Have you watched them this year and thought, well, they were really good in that game? Like the Limerick game, yeah, but Limerick were off the pace in that game.
Maybe so, yeah. But John McDonagh
Waterford did a lot right, but like the Barry, like the best thing Waterford have done in this championship, in my opinion, is they've shown people a good way to target Barry Nash. I think that's the best thing that they've done. But apart from that, like you look at how Clare just put Limerick to the sword the next time. Like, I think Limerick were actually way better in the Tipperary game than they were in the Waterford game. And yeah, it's just an interesting one. I just feel like if Davy was very defiant after the Clare game. He was very much like, I'm not going anywhere. This is the project. I'm here. Well, show us in this game then. Show us in this game. Put up a performance in this game. Hit over 20 points. Use your forwards. Put Desi Hutchinson, the very good forward, up front. Like, stop playing him around the middle. Why would you do that? Like, put your best forwards up front, go for the game, and see what happens. And this is the tricky thing for Tip, because Waterford still, the way people are sleeping on them is quite dangerous. They still have outstanding players. This on paper is still the team that everybody was convinced was going to challenge Limerick all the way for the All-Ireland last year. They haven't lost any players since then. And like, yeah, you list out all those players that Tip are missing. All those lads, Jason Ford, Barry Heffernan are the two main ones where I'm like, wow, they're missing those lads. And Cathal Barrett, of course, with it after the knock that he took against Limerick. If Waterford get clicking, Austin Gleeson, Patrick Fitzgerald, Desi Hutchinson, they have the power to do serious damage to this Tipperary defence. And with Liam Cahill at the helm of Tip, they might have their motivation. So it's an interesting game. And I think, like, to back up that point, if there is a future for Davy Fitz and Waterford, show us in this game. Because if they go out with a whimper, if they go out and lose and only score 15 points and Tip put over 223, I think it's a long way back.
Definitely is. And John Milan actually mentioned on Sunday Sport on RT last weekend that he expects Waterford to come out full on blazing in this game because the fans will turn their back on it. But I was thinking at the same time, yes, there's an argument for that. But there was hardly any Waterford fans at their apparent home game against Clare. Like, the fans don't seem interested at the moment, and they won't be interested in this game clearly because there's nothing to play for in this game, and they're kind of on the beach. So, like, at the same time, I know Waterford have been it's been questionable with their tactics so far. Like Desi Hutchinson, as you mentioned there, that was incredible in a way. But is there an argument as well that the fans kind of don't give them any favours either, the Waterford players, because they are getting behind them as they used to in previous seasons?
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing then of, all right, well, don't show up when we're in the All-Ireland final then. Like, that's a bit, if you're not going to show up when times are tough, don't suddenly think that, you should be showing up now that things are going good. But that's just the reality of, supporting a team for a lot of people, is that when you get good results, more fans turn up. Like, that is just, nobody wants to come and watch their team get hammered. And I think it will be interesting to see how many Waterford fans do turn up for this game, because it's against a Tipperary side that are in serious form. It's Liam Cahill as well, of all people. You know my opinion on hiring managers that are inevitably going to go to a rival county. I don't understand why they do it. Like Henry Shefflin with Galway, like that's literally Henry Shefflin with Galway is literally as if Galway are going, okay, Kilkenny, here is everything you need to know about Galway's hurling team for the next 10 years. There you go. Like, why are they doing that? Henry Shefflin will know everything there is to know about Evan Nyland, about Tom Monaghan, about all of Galway's next generation of stars. Like, he'll know what they're good at, what they're bad at, like, do you get what I mean?
I definitely do. Like, you epitomise it with handing over the book and everything.
Yeah,
like,
literally. Here you go, signed, sealed, delivered. That's everything you need to know about our team. Like, I just don't get it. It's not like Galway don't have candidates. Like, fair enough exactly. If you want to bring up the standard. Fair enough if, like, say, for example, Offaly, when they got Michael Fennelly in, like, they're wanting to bring their standard up, and Offaly aren't a direct rival to Kilkenny and won't be over the next 5 years. But Galway are already, and they will be. Why are they doing that?
Going from Waterford and Tip down to Galway, Kilkenny, the mad word of the podcast, everybody. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's mad really that
maybe this is why RT have a script.
Probably. That's the thing. That's probably why. But yeah, we're predicting in both games that Limerick and Tip will go through. So it does mean, according to our predictions anyway, that Limerick will be third in the group, staying in the All-Ireland, and Tip and Clare will be in the Munster final. And before we get on to Leinster, that should be a cracker Munster final if it occurs, of course.
Oh, absolute cracker, because make no mistake, I think Clare will go for that like their lives depend on it. Here's something that will blow your mind as a listener if you're watching this. Tony Kelly does not have a Munster medal.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. John Conlon does not have a Munster medal. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Clare's last Munster was 1998, correct?
You're correct, yeah.
Like, that's just mental, isn't it? Like, when you think about how good they've been since 2013, and they still haven't won one.
Yeah, and Tip haven't won one since 2016, I think it is. So that's still a pretty barren spell for Tip. That's 7 years. So
it's mad because I immediately jumped to thinking about about how they were in All Ireland finals and stuff like that. But yeah, God, like they won. It's gas. Both of these sides have won the All Ireland more recently than they've won Munster. So that tells you all you need to know about the standard of Munster.
It does, definitely. And before we move on to Leinster, there's a question for me, actually, about the Cork team. I'll read it out here. Match of the Cork, Cork team seems to be trying to test it. Should they throw in Downey, Power, Ethan Toomey, and Cunningham? Look, like Downey and Cunningham are in the under-20s. Power probably, but still, like Shane Kingston's an unbelievable forward, so it's hard to drop him. Ethan Toomey, I'd be definitely up for having Ethan Toomey in the team. I thought he was brilliant for the Bars. But judging by our predictions, Cork will be out of the championship. But maybe we could try them players next year. Obviously, there's an under-20 final to look forward to for Cork and Offaly, and there will be a preview on that next week on the podcast. But that is next week, of course. But we move on to the Leinster Championship, and we start off with 2 games that are not televised for some strange reason, and it is the relegation battle. And I feel terrible for saying this for Wexford fans. It is a relegation battle. Wexford against Kilkenny in Wexford Park, 2 p.m. on Sunday. Who would have thought at the end of the season, never mind Wexford could go down right now, the prospect of going down, to even be involved in a relegation battle with Westmeath and Antrim for Wexford? The Wexford fans would have been absolutely gobsmacked at the start of the season if you were to tell them that.
Yeah, I still can't wrap my head around it. Like, what did they do in the dressing room at halftime in that game? What did they... yeah. Then the way they just fell apart. Like there's serious problems there in that camp. Nobody took that game by the scruff of the neck. The penalty as well was just such a bad penalty, and they just crumbled from the inside. And Westmeath, I don't mean to even say this in any sort of a disrespectful way to Westmeath, because their comeback was sensational. But the 2 goals that they got at the end from Niall Mitchell, nothing special. Literally just hit the ball up, big full forward goes up and catches it and sticks it in the net. Nothing special about them. And that was just Wexford just allowing Westmeath to step all over them. Like, what has it got into their head? This is the same side that was 2019 Leinster champions and nearly rode that momentum all the way to an All-Ireland final, which I think they would have won that year if they had to go over Tipperary in that semi-final. Like, just crazy. Well, they'd already beaten Kilkenny in the Leinster final. So it was like maybe Kilkenny would have come back and beat them. Like, we'd seen them do that so many times, Galway 2012. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. But that was the best chance to win an All-Ireland since 96, in my opinion. And since then, they've just, I think you said some stat to me that they've only beaten, have they beaten any, what was the teams again that they've beaten since that year that you were saying? You listed them out, and it was striking how they'd beaten nobody really significant.
Yeah, I think the only significant team they beat Kilkenny last year, that was the only one. 2021 they didn't beat anybody. I think Brian Lohan from Clare actually knocked them out of the championship loads of times. Like, I try and remember 2020 they got hammered by Galway and hammered by Clare as well. So that was nothing. 2021 they got beaten by Clare yet again in that season. 2022 they obviously won to Kilkenny, but maybe that was argued as a smash and grab game. But
then they got knocked out by who?
Clare.
It's a bit of a trend here.
Exactly, but
maybe they drew the game against Westmeath to get away from that.
Maybe.
no, not again.
But even last year, I know they won Leinster in 2019, but even as far as recent as last year, they were 10 minutes away from an All-Ireland semi-final. But for Aaron Shadowher having an absolutely brilliant game in the last 10 minutes and denying them that place. If you were to tell Wexford fans back then they'd be in a relegation battle this weekend in May, the Wexford fans would have been absolutely shocked.
Yeah, it's crazy how quick everything has just gone pear-shaped on them. And you're looking at it thinking, like, either they're just like the way they lost as well, like 16 points up at half time. How do you lose that game? That's actually impressive how they lost. It's impressive that they messed it up that much. Even then, they were 8 points up with 5 or 6 minutes to go. How did you lose that game? Like, for elite hurlers, imagine seeing the Joe McDonagh Cup next year and Lee Chin, Rory O'Connor, Damien Reck are all playing in the Joe McDonagh. Like, that would just be absolutely mental. And I think, look, Dara Egan, I think the jig is up now at this stage. I think that could also play into the mindset of Wexford in this game. I think Egan knows his time is up. I think he knows that he's going to leave at the end of the season. So it's just, can a man that is already pretty much half out the door raise the levels of his team to beat Kilkenny? And you know that Kilkenny are going to relish the opportunity to send Wexford down.
Yeah, that's the thing about this as well. And even you say them type of players playing at the Joe McDonagh Cup, Lee Chin, Conor McDonald, Rory O'Connor, all them players. But I just think back to Offaly, for example. They went all the way down to Christy Ring. So, like, there is a possibility there that the rust just won't stop if Wexford aren't careful. If they don't produce the under-20 players sooner to the team as they've expected, they could go on a huge run in the next few years. Even if they go down this weekend, that would knock the confidence for some of them players.
Yeah, and like, I actually think it is going to happen, Matthew. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I think Kilkenny will beat them, and I think that Antrim will beat Westmeath. That's just like what I'm fully believing will happen. Again, it's similar. Like, I can't really wrap my brain around the potential that they could go down. But I think it's time to just wake up and smell the coffee. Like, this is lined up pretty perfectly. Like, I think Antrim are going to need to survive. I think Wexford have more of a chance staying up by Westmeath holding Antrim than them beating Kilkenny. You could make that argument. Then again, look, it's in Wexford Park. This is where Wexford need their fans. Wexford need their fans to pack out Wexford Park, give the team a boost, give them every bit of support that they can to try and get over the line and get this victory, to stay in the All-Ireland Championship for next year, and then bring in a new manager, honestly, at that point, and try and rebuild.
Yeah, it's going to be a tense few minutes heading for Wexford. And I put up the game there of Westmeath and Antrim. That's on at 2:00 as well. Like,
what do you think is going to happen?
I honestly think Wexford are going to go down because Antrim will be relishing this opportunity as well.
If you think Kilkenny won't snap your hand off for a chance to send Wexford down, like,
yeah, I think they'll definitely relish the opportunity of sending Wexford down, definitely, and especially after beating them in the Leinster final in 2019. Kilkenny have wanted to get revenge on Wexford for so many years now. You know,
but it's another thing as well. It's another thing of, look, people have said, well, Wexford went away to Nolan Park and they beat Kilkenny last year. And it's like, no, but hang on, Wexford had shown us something that year.
Yeah.
They were really good in the league. They beat Limerick in the league. They drew at Galway in the Leinster Championship that year. They'd shown us something. They've shown us nothing this year. Nothing. Like, they've lost to Galway comfortably, lost to Dublin, never really looked like winning that game, lost to Westmeath and had a terrible league. They've shown us nothing this year. So it's not exactly the same as last year. Are they capable of turning it around for one game? Yes. Do I think they will? Sadly, no. Because I really, really like Wexford. Like, Wexford was always a team that I had a soft spot for, but I genuinely just think it's too much of an ask.
Do you realistically think Westmeath could beat Antrim to save Wexford's skin? Like, it is possible, but when you look at Antrim's players, like, Antrim will relish the opportunity to send Wexford down as well.
I think Antrim are going to beat Westmeath. I think just look, even though people will say, well, Westmeath beat Wexford, Antrim have been playing at a consistently higher level for a while. And every game that Antrim have played, bar, say, the Galway one, has been competitive throughout. And they've been consistently putting up big scores in every one of their games. Don't look at the one-off game. Look at all of their games. Antrim have been consistently competing now with the top teams for a while in the Allianz Hurling League and then in the Leinster Championship as well. And they've been getting some good results. And I will probably say that, yeah, I think Antrim are going to beat Westmeath. I completely agree with that comment. If Wexford go down to the Joe McDonagh, well, then you can pretty much wrap up next year's Leinster Championship as well, that it will be Galway, Kilkenny, Dublin getting out again. So, like, it's going to be a massive blow to the Leinster Championship if Wexford do go down.
It is definitely, and we'll talk about the Joe McDonagh Cup Final, the team that could replace Wexford or Westmeath or Antrim.
Actually, sorry, that's a bit disrespectful for myself. I think Antrim could make a breakthrough potentially over the next couple of years.
Possibly so. And yeah, we're predicting Wexford will go down anyway, unfortunately for Wexford fans.
Crazy.
But a comment here about Munster and Leinster, that Railway Cup video that we did on your channel, Seamus, a few months ago. A few Kilkenny players will get into the Munster team. Thoughts on that?
Depends how many he means. If you're still watching, how many Munster, how many Kilkenny players do you think would get into Munster?
That's a question that Jack has to answer. We'll see if he answers in the next few minutes, but we will go on to the next game.
Well, I'll put my answer of how many I think will actually get in. I think you could make an argument for Owen Murphy in goal. I think Hugh Lawler gets in, fullback. I think he's fantastic. And then everywhere else is difficult, man. I can't lie. It starts to get more and more tricky. Like, don't get fabulous hurlers like TJ Reid and Adrian Mullen and Pádraig Walsh, but where do they go in? Like, who do they take the place of?
That's the thing, and we'll see if that question is answered in the next few minutes at the end of this podcast. But we'll move on to the last Leinster Championship game this weekend, and it is ironically live on RT2. Like, first of all, Dublin Galway at Croke Park live on RT2 at 2 p.m. Do you think this game should be shown live, especially with the situation Wexford are in?
No, like, why have they picked this one? Okay, let's pick the one game that has nothing going on it, basically, and show that one. Like, imagine that. Do you know what that's like? That's like, do you know when Match of the Day do their Premier League, the end of the season relegation battle?
Yeah.
That's like as if they were like, well, we're just gonna leave Nottingham Forest versus Bournemouth over here. We're gonna go watch a mid-table clash between between Fulham and Chelsea now, because Chelsea are mid-table. We're gonna watch 10th versus 11th playoff in a dead rubber game, rather than getting our cameras over to this relegation battle over here, where every goal is hugely significant. Like, Dublin are already going through. Dublin won't win this game. I hate to admit it, but I can't see us winning this game. Galway have turned a corner since the 2021 game. Like, that was a really strange game. Galway, Dublin last time in Croke Park, because obviously Dublin did win last time in Croke Park that these two played each other. I think it was a 118 to 114 Dublin won by. And I just remember watching that game though, and the arrogance off Galway was just... I remember Joe Canning got a 21-yard free and went for goal in the first 10 minutes or something. Like, it was just, they clearly expected Dublin to fold in the first 10 minutes. Dublin just stood and stared them in the eye for the first 10 minutes, and then Galway crumbled. So it was just crazy how quick the tables turned in that game. Shane O'Neill's not there anymore. It's a very different Galway team. And I do think they will win this game. You look at the scores that they've been putting up: 5-29 against Antrim. Hugely impressive. Very entertaining game with Kilkenny. Yeah, and comfortable victory over Wexford. I do think Galway are just a bit ahead of Dublin right now, even though I was very impressed with Dublin's performance against Kilkenny, and the victory over Wexford was very good as well. I am just going to go for Galway I think they have the better forwards than Dublin, and I think that will be enough.
Probably have to go Galway win as well. And what Dublin need to get into the Leinster final, to reiterate this for the viewers or listeners, Dublin need to win this game, and they need Kilkenny to draw or beat Wexford as well. So I don't think they're going to beat Galway in this reign of form. But you're going through to the next round of the All-Irelands. You're going to face I think it's the Joe McDonagh Cup winner in the preliminary round. We will get on to Joe McDonagh Cup final.
Remember last time that happened? Eddie Brennan unleashed.
Yeah, exactly. And where do you think Dublin are at the moment? Like a lot of people complaining, Dublin fans complaining about Micheál Donoghue's tactics, but you're true to Leinster, you're true to the All Ireland from the Leinster Championship now. So, like, you're through to the next round. Like, it's still
I think there's an
positive.
argument to that though, is just how bad Wexford have been. Like,
Mm,
do you get what I mean?
yeah, maybe,
Like,
maybe there's.
look, it's one of those things where for Dublin, it's like we've seemed to have the exact same season every year. Like, if you could play a game of guess that season with Dublin, and if you could just say, right, we're going to beat Wexford in a game that gets people going, oh, okay, then we'll get beaten by Kilkenny and we'll finish third, or Wexford will somehow leapfrog us into third, and we'll go out either at the quarterfinal stage to the Munster team or the Joe McDonagh team, or we'll go out in fourth place. That's been Dublin's year since the round robin has been introduced. Like, I know we got to the Leinster final in 21 after beating Galway, but that was COVID times. That was different. And we beat a very off-colour Galway in that game. Look, it's one of those things where I'm looking at it saying that we do have a glass ceiling that we can't seem to get through. We can't seem to beat Galway. We can't seem to beat Kilkenny when they're at their best. We need them to be way off the pace to get close to them. I do think our level is improving. Like, if you look at the likes of Donald Burke, Keane O'Sullivan, like Sean Curry, like, we do have genuinely really talented forwards now, which is something that we were crying out for the last 10 years. We do have that now. And the work ethic that they were putting in against Kilkenny was outstanding. But I feel like Galway would have watched that Kilkenny game, and they would have watched how Kilkenny very cleverly just kept switching the play. Kilkenny just kept going backwards. Owen Murphy started coming out to the 13 line, take a little pass back, switch the play to the other side of the defence. Aina Murphy, the Galway goalkeeper, is very comfortable at doing that, and he will do that. He will come out, take a ball, switch it across to the other wing. So I do think it will be difficult for Dublin to do the same tactics in this game. And I think in a straight shootout, Dublin's forwards versus Galway's forwards, I don't think we're winning that one. But I do think that we are making progress. I do think we're making progress. Like, Donoghue's tactics, they aren't always the prettiest, but they are relatively effective. And look, he did get Galway to an All-Ireland title in 2017. So, yeah, I think we are making progress. But again, it's one of those things where I won't really believe that we can compete with the best until I see us beat the best. And it's been a long, long, long time since Dublin have beaten a team that really made me be like, apart from the Galway game, but even then when we beat Galway, I know I'm rambling here, but even when we beat Galway looked so off the pace that it almost took away from how good the result was, because Dublin only scored 118 in that game as well. So it was like, that won't beat the best teams. You know that won't beat the best teams. I haven't seen us, apart from that game, beat a team where I was like, wow, I didn't expect us to win that one in such a long time.
Yeah, definitely so. And we'll see if Dublin progress even further. We predict that Galway Kilkenny will be in the Leinster final, and that should be an absolute cracker of a game. And finally, before we end the podcast, we'll go on to the Joe McDonagh Cup Final. Carlow against Offaly, 4:45 live on RT2 from Croke Park. So, yeah, big game this, and hopefully RT gives us a very good coverage anyway. So Donlow will get his hurling oxygen anyway. But jokes aside, this is actually, going to be a very good game when you look at the stats here. Carlow have a lot of good scores on the team. Like, Martin Kavanagh scored 2 goals and 63 points in 5 games, which is an incredible record from him. Chris Nolan, brilliant. Conor Kehoe, very good. Owen Cahill's doing it for Offaly. So is Killian Kiley. Shane Dooley's still doing it as well. So, and it's a big prize on offer to go up to the All-Ireland series, possibly in place of Wexford as well. So, does it get much bigger?
Exactly. And not only that, you'd be looking at it saying, if Wexford go down, whichever one of these teams goes up would actually fancy their chances of staying up in the All-Ireland Championship for more than just a season. So this is a massive game for these teams. And imagine going back 10, 15 years ago and saying that after this weekend, we could have a second-tier hurling competition with Wexford, Offaly, and Laois, like, all taking part in it. It was crazy, like. And but now, like, here we are. Like, it's an interesting one because, let's be honest, Offaly completely dropped the ball with their last game. They didn't care about it. They just put out whatever team, whoever would, said that was almost like a send a text. Are you up for a game today? No problem. Like, Carlo came up and beat them pretty handedly. And I think that will be an interesting one, because almost on the psychological front, will that have any impact on the Offaly players going into this game?
Probably not, I don't think, because most of them weren't
None
playing.
of them were there, yeah. None of them were playing. And yeah, like, but then will it have like the positive effect on Carlo? Will they think, well, we've beaten you by this much, so now we're going to beat your best team? Like, will it have annoyed them to an extent?
That's the thing, because you look at actually, like, before the competition even started, a lot of people, including myself, probably yourself as well, predicted Offaly to go on and win the Joe McDonagh Cup.
Yeah.
And you might so go into the final, but look at stats in it. Carlo have scored 13 goals in 5 games and conceded 1. That's incredible,
Yeah.
So Carlo, looking at that, they have a potent attack and they have a very good defence, very solid as well. So the only goal they conceded was against Laois, Carlo. So, and they've kept the clean sheet against every other one of the 4 teams. So it's an incredible record, and Carlo and Tobalali will definitely fancy their chances.
Yeah, without doubt. And you ran through the forwards that they've got. If they've got Kavanagh, if they've got Nolan, they've always got a chance. And like, that's what I mean, is that Offaly definitely didn't show them any respect in the last game by putting out the team that they did. Now they got to show them respect in this game. And Carlo will definitely come into it confident in their defence. They can hold the likes of Owen Cahill, hold the likes of Shane Dooley, Killian Kiley. Going to be really interesting, this one. Personally, I'm going to stick with what I said at the start of the year. I said Offaly at the start of the year. I'll stick with that. But I think it's going to be a cracking game of hurling. You look at the standard of the Joe McDonagh Cup over the last 2 years, the finals between Antrim and Kerry, etc. The standard is getting better and better and better.
It is definitely, and Kerry must feel absolutely sick at the moment when you think about it. I think it's 3 finals. They failed to win every single one of them, and they're not in this final either. So it's going to be very interesting to see them come up against Wexford next year, if Wexford get relegated, of course. And the preliminary quarterfinals, actually, if the results come to fruition, I predict Offaly, for the record, as well, to win this game, despite Carlo might put up a challenge. It'll be Carlo against Limerick and Offaly against Dublin. Now, to be honest, Limerick should beat Carlo pretty handily. No disrespect to Carlo, like, they've some good forwards, they played well at their level, but Limerick is at a whole other level.
That's not a controversial thing to say. The 3 in a row All-Ireland champions.
Exactly. And when you think about, I actually made a bold prediction at the start of the year, and it looks to be the game that it is. Offaly against Dublin. I said Offaly would beat Dublin at the start of the championship campaign. Thoughts?
Interesting, for sure. You could probably say that Offaly have more threats than Dublin, like in terms of scoring threats. Dublin, there's one big Donald Burke target to mark every single game. And they do seem to be quite reliant on Burke in every game that they play. I still think Dublin will probably beat Offaly. I still think Dublin should beat Offaly. If we have any notions of competing with any team from Munster, we should be beating Offaly. So, like, I will say that Dublin should beat Offaly. But that being said, as I said last time we came up against a Joe McDonagh winner, we all know what happened.
Yeah. And that was my way of thinking as well. Like, Offaly now were probably a better team in terms of players than Laois were back in the day. So you never know.
Yeah. But then again, Laois went on to give Tipperary a good rattle in the game after that. So, like, that was a very good Laois team, and they went on to compete in Leinster for a couple of years. And then when Eddie Brennan left, like, that was a huge loss to them. I'd probably say it's a lot closer than that. I wouldn't be too confident in saying that this Offaly team is better than that Laois team. I think Dublin should beat Offaly, but then I wouldn't pick us to go any further than that.
Yeah, you'll be facing the Munster finalists after that, so Clare Tipperary, that's going to be a very hard game for Dublin.
Oh, good.
Exactly.
Peace out.
Yeah, and it's been a very good podcast again. Lots of good laughs, lots of good content as well. And thank you, Seamus, for coming onto the podcast today. And enjoy the games of the weekend. Should be a festival of action in both hurling and football.
Not about it, Matthew. Always a pleasure. Thank you.